Caleb's life was far from ordinary. For years, he had worked at the local Pizza Hut, located in a dingy neighborhood in Polk County, Florida. It was the kind of place where the term crazy took on a whole new meaning and strange stories were. On one particularly sweltering summer evening, Caleb was preparing to fulfill an order that had come in for large pizzas to be delivered to an address in a rather dingy part of town. It was the kind of order that made him wonder what motivated someone to order so many pizzas and such. But like a dedicated employee, he brushed the thought aside and set off on his scooter with the hot pizza neatly stacked in his delivery bag. As he approached the address on the ticket, the condition of the houses in the neighborhood got worse and worse. Cracked windows, peeling paint, and overgrown weeds were the norm. Finally, Caleb stopped in front of an old, seemingly abandoned house. The situation already seemed odd, but Caleb, not a fan of fussing, decided to continue with the delivery. Two men stood at the entrance to the house, their shadows cast ominously by the dim streetlight. They didn't look like typical pizza customers, but Caleb, optimistic as ever, smiled welcomingly and handed them the pizza boxes. The lantern light revealed the sinister tones of their expressions, but he was too preoccupied to pay attention. "Here's your order, gentlemen. That'll be $45.50, Caleb said, looking at the check he held ready in his hand. Before he could react, one of the men, tall and lanky, suddenly lunged forward. His fist slammed into Caleb's face, sending him reeling backward. The pain was searing, Caleb's vision blurred, and he felt the metallic taste of blood in his mouth. Wasting no time, the second man grabbed the bag of pizza and the small amount of money Caleb had collected from the previous deliveries. In a matter of seconds, they had robbed him of his meager earnings and dinner for the night. As they lurked in the shadows, they tossed a mocking thanks for the pizza. A stunned Caleb lay on the ground trying to comprehend what had happened. It was obvious that not only had they robbed him, but they had managed to seriously injure him. The pain in his face was unbearable, but something even more disturbing. Caleb realized he couldn't move his right leg. Examining it, he began to panic. It was twisted at an unnatural angle, and the excruciating pain that reverberated in his foot was unlike anything he had ever experienced. The bandits hadn't just taken away his money and food. They had potentially taken away his ability to walk normally. Someone passing by must have heard the commotion because they dialed 911. Sirens were soon heard wailing, and paramedics arrived and took Caleb to a local hospital. He was immediately operated on, as it became clear that his metatarsal bones, the bones of the foot, were shattered. The surgery was successful, but Caleb had a long road to recovery. He needed to have metal rods inserted to support his foot. However, his body did not accept the foreign objects and infections set in. It was an agonizing ordeal, constant pain, trips to the hospital, and a seemingly endless cycle of surgeries, all with minimal financial resources. Caleb's life changed dramatically and unexpectedly, all for $45.50 and a few pizzas. For 18 long months, he struggled not only with his physical recovery, but also his emotional well-being. He was deprived of the simple joys of life, such as going for a walk or going out with friends in the evening. He couldn't help but think about the two people who had changed the course of his life in a matter of minutes. In all of this, Caleb's determination shone brightly. He overcame pain, setbacks, and financial hardship in an effort to reclaim the life he took for granted. This ordeal was a lesson in resilience and the unpredictability of life that he would carry with him for the rest of his life. In the dimly lit Willowdale neighborhood, amidst abandoned buildings and dilapidated houses, there was a seemingly ordinary but popular pizzeria called Tony's. It was the kind of place that served as a lifeline for the residents of this disadvantaged neighborhood. Two of the most dedicated employees of Tony's were Emma and Clara. Emma, a hardy woman of about 25, had worked here for many years, working her way up from cashier to delivery driver. Clara, an energetic teenager, had only recently joined the company. Emma took the girl under her wing, helping her navigate the complicated world of pizza delivery. One fateful evening, Emma offered Clara a ride home. The girl, Clara, sat in the passenger seat of Emma's battered car, bored but content to accompany her mentor as she completed the last delivery of the day. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the streets of Willowdale grew darker, casting eerie shadows on the dilapidated houses. A sense of desolation hung in the air as Emma drove the car through the maze of potholed roads. They pulled up to the last delivery point, a house that seemed more ominous than all the others. The facade was in disrepair, the paint peeling, the yard overgrown. Emma hesitated for a moment, but realized it was her duty to deliver the pizza. Emma walked to the door, carrying the pizza box, while Clara remained in the car, feeling uneasy about what was happening. The door creaked open and a disheveled and unkempt man in only his underwear appeared on the doorstep. His blank stare and unkempt appearance sent shivers down Emma's spine. "Come in," the man said in a hoarse, anxious whisper, gesturing for Emma to enter the dimly lit house. Emma felt her instincts kick in, every nerve telling her that this situation was not worth getting involved in. She hesitated, her voice shaking. "I'm sorry, but I can't come in. It's against the rules. You see?" The man's demeanor changed abruptly, his expression contorting into a sinister grin. "Rules don't matter here," he growled, his breath reeking of alcohol. He lunged forward, trying to grab Emma's arm and pull her inside. Emma fought back desperately, her heart pounding frantically. She realized that she was losing this fight as suddenly the shrill sound of a car klaxon broke the tension. Clara, who was sitting in the car, began honking frantically, drawing attention to what was happening. The man, startled by the unexpected intrusion, loosened his grip holding Emma. Wasting no time, she broke free and rushed to the car. Jumping into the car, Clara panicked and raced away from the ominous house. The pizzeria seemed so close, and Emma couldn't shake off the terror that gripped her. Tears streamed down her face as she remembered the horrible encounter. Clara's presence and her quick reaction saved her from a potentially dangerous situation. Back at Tony's pizzeria, they reported the incident to their manager. The manager, concerned for their safety, decided to implement new safety protocols, especially when delivering to such troubled neighborhoods. Emma's incident served as a stark reminder of the dangers lurking in the shadows of the troubled neighborhood in which they worked. As the days passed, Emma and Clara were still reeling from the incident. It was a stark reminder of the dangers they faced in their work and the importance of looking out for each other, especially in the most unexpected and dangerous situations. It was a cold and snowy Christmas day in the quiet town of Crestwood. James, a young pizza delivery boy, was working the night shift, determined to make a little extra money for the holiday season. Crestwood was known for its picturesque streets lined with beautifully decorated homes that exuded warmth and holiday spirit. James loved his job, especially during the holidays when he could observe the joy and togetherness of the town's residents. That evening, James received an order for a large pepperoni pizza. The address appeared to belong to a pleasant neighborhood, just like the rest of Crestwood. James got into his old and reliable car, which had seen many pizza deliveries, and headed to his destination. After driving for a bit, James found himself in front of the house in question. It was a well-kept two-story house decorated with Christmas lights and decorations. A soft glow could be seen from the windows. It really was a charming and peaceful neighborhood, or so it seemed to him. James walked up to the door, holding a pizza box, and knocked. The door opened slightly and a face appeared on the doorstep, not too friendly. An elderly man with a scowl growled, "Who the hell is this?" Shocked by such rudeness, James kept his composure and replied, "I have a pizza delivery for you, sir." The man frowned even more and rudely replied, "Leave it on the doorstep and get out of here." The abruptness of the man's response was startling, but James did his best to be professional and polite. He reminded the man that he needed to pay for his pizza. James said, "Excuse me, sir, but I need you to pay for the pizza before I can leave it here." The man's face contorted with anger and he muttered, "How much do I owe you?" James quickly calculated the cost and called out the total amount. At this point, the situation took an eerie and frightening turn. The expression on the man's face darkened and he growled, "I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I give you 10 seconds to get your ugly, yellow, worthless ass off my decency before I pump your guts full of lead." James' heart raced and his palms became clammy. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. He was just a simple pizza delivery guy trying to make a living, and now he was in a life-threatening situation. Without thinking, he stammered an apology, turned on his heel, and started to walk away from the doorstep. But as soon as he took the first step, the man in the house coldly started counting down. 1, 2. Fear gripped James as he heard the countdown. Panic ran through his veins and he realized he had to get out of there. He didn't wait for the countdown to reach 10. He rushed to his car with the pizza box in hand. And the moment he slammed the car door shut, gunshots rang out from the house. James rushed away from the nightmarish scene, not daring to look back. His heart was racing and his mind was filled with confusion and terror. What had just happened? Who was this man? Why was he threatening James' life over a pizza? Despite his fear and shock, James made the fateful decision not to report the incident to the authorities. He was too shocked by what had happened and didn't want to get involved in further events. He decided that for his own safety, it was best to forget about that strange and scary Christmas night and concentrate on delivering pizzas to less hostile customers. In the center of a small backwater town nestled by a winding river, life flowed at a slow and predictable pace. The inhabitants lived a simple lifestyle, and the town had a reputation for being a haven of tranquility and close-knit communities. Here, the boundaries between stranger and neighbor were blurred, and everyone knew everyone. John was no exception to this rule. A young man in his 20s, he had grown up in this town and worked delivering pizzas to the local pizzeria. It was a job he had taken after graduating from high school, and although he often dreamed of something more interesting, he knew that the pizza delivery job provided a steady income. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and cast long shadows on the narrow streets of the city, John received an order. The address pointed him to a house with a trailer in his backyard, a little farther from the center of town than most. Getting into his shabby sedan, he hoped for a generous tip to justify the extra mileage. The house in question was at the end of a quiet alley surrounded by dense woods. As John pulled up to the house, he noticed that the flickering porch light cast eerie shadows that danced across the rusty paneling of the trailer. The sight sent a shiver down his spine, but he decided it was a trick of the light. Taking the pizza box, John climbed the rickety wooden steps leading up to the trailer's front door. John knocked on the door 3 times and waited, anticipating a tip to temporarily forget the unsettling environment. The door creaked open and a tall, weary man with disheveled facial hair and a worn plaid shirt appeared on the doorstep. He peered out from behind the door and eyed John suspiciously. John smiled affably, holding out a pizza box. "What's up?" he said, breaking the silence. "That'll be $12.50. The man's face contorted into a grimace and he leaned in, hostility evident in his voice. "What are you doing here?" "I didn't order the damn pizza." John's heart beat faster. He'd had to deal with irate customers before, but this was different. There was a threatening note in the guy's voice, and John began to wonder if it was a prank or a hostile setup. The man gripped the door tighter, and John's eyes widened as he noticed the shotgun that had been menacingly hidden behind the door slowly coming into view. Fear gripped him, his voice trembled, and he stammered, "I just came to deliver pizza. Man, I swear." The man didn't lower the shotgun, but seemed to hesitate. There was tension in the air, and they looked at each other as if trapped. John had to think fast, suppressing his fear. John gathered his courage and began to explain. "Look, there must be some confusion here. I work at a pizza place, and here's the address they gave me. If you want, I can call my boss and double-check." The man's eyes narrowed as he considered John's words. After what seemed like an eternity, he lowered the gun slightly, a flicker of doubt in his eyes. "You'd better not lie. The cops have been snooping around here lately, and I don't want to take any chances." John nodded vigorously, his voice shaking with relief. "I promise. I'm not a cop. I'm just trying to do my job. Can you point me to the right address? Maybe someone else in this cul-de-sac ordered a pizza by mistake." The man seemed to relax a little, his grip on the shotgun loosening. "All right," he said. "I'll show you where you need to go. Just take your time, and make sure no one sees you here." John followed the man, who introduced himself as Jake, to a house a few houses away. Jake explained that he was protecting him because he had recently started growing cannabis in his backyard and was worried about unwanted attention. John thanked him for the advice. As he left the house, John couldn't escape his thoughts about the strange, disturbing encounter. He knew he had to get back to work, but the fear that had gripped him during those tense moments never left him. In the heart of the bustling city of Rivertown, nestled between tall skyscrapers and busy streets, Thomas Thompson led an unassuming life. Working at Tony's Pizzeria, he was used to the routine of delivering pizzas to all corners of the city. One fateful evening, however, his life took a dark and inexplicable turn. The night was heavy, thick clouds hid the moon and dimly lit the city. Thomas's last delivery that evening was to a luxurious hotel called the Grandview. It was an extravagant establishment with luxurious rooms and fine dining frequented by the city's elite. Thomas was directed to room 305, which belonged to the mysterious guest. The hotel porter had warned him that a strange man was staying there, and Thomas was overcome with an icy feeling that he could not shake off. Nevertheless, he picked up the pizza box and headed for the room. Once in the room, Thomas knocked quietly on the door, hoping to finish the delivery and return to the warmth of his humble apartment. The door creaked open and he was greeted by a gaunt, disheveled man in his 40s. Sunken eyes, disheveled facial hair, clothes in stark contrast to the luxury of the hotel. "Sir, I presume?" Thomas asked, his voice trembling slightly. The man simply nodded, not taking his eyes off the pizza. "That's me." "Put it on the table." Thomas placed the pizza on the table and began calculating the cost. "That'll be $18.50. Sir?" The man rummaged through his wallet and held out a crisp $20 bill. Thomas noticed the strange insignia on his wrist but paid it no mind, hurrying to complete the transaction. "Keep the change," the man muttered and reached for the pizza box. As Thomas turned to leave the room, a wave of anxiety swept over him. Something was wrong, but he couldn't figure out what it was. There was an air of secrecy emanating from the mysterious guest that left Thomas with more questions than answers. Half an hour passed and Thomas returned to the pizzeria, ready to bow out and head home. Just as he was about to leave, his attention was caught by the news on the television. "Breaking news from the Grandview Hotel," the anchorwoman said with feeling. "There has been a shocking incident on the 3rd floor. Law enforcement officers have broken into room 305 and are reporting shots fired." Thomas's heart raced as he connected all the dots. He had just delivered a pizza to that very room. His mind was bursting with fear and curiosity. What on earth had happened in that room? With trepidation, Thomas stayed in the pizzeria, unable to tear himself away from the drama unfolding on the television screen. The news reports were chaotic and inconclusive. All he knew was that the police had taken over the 3rd floor of the Grandview Hotel, and the situation was dire. As night fell, the drama at the Grandview took center stage on all news channels. Authorities provided little information, fueling public interest in the mystery man and the violent events unfolding behind the doors of room 305.